Well, once again, welcome everyone. And my name is David. Welcome everyone here who's in the temple with us today, and also to those who may view this at a later date on YouTube. Today's topic is true charity. And I wanted to start off with a reading from Paramahansa Yogananda about true charity. Desire salvation so that you may give it to everyone else. Desire to drink God's nectar of bliss so that you may share it with all. That is true charity. I think we can probably all relate to that to some degree, that we would hope that as we live these lives, that our depth of understanding of spirit and our soul connection becomes stronger and stronger, not only for our own salvation or for our own awakening, but also so that we have something really valuable to share with our friends and with everyone on the planet. And right now we have some things to share, and I can speak for myself. I feel a little bit limited in what I can share because of my limited perspective. But I'm thankful for the perspective that I do have. And I think that we can all really relate to charity just in general, because we were raised by people, whether it was our parents or our grandparents or whoever it may have been, who demonstrated charity day in and day out, year after year. They had to have charity in their heart in order to commit themselves to this long process of raising a child, or maybe many children. And if we, maybe each one of us can think of one of our parents or one of our guardians who really did give that kind of charity to us all the time. And they may not have been, quote, spiritual people, unquote. They may not have had an understanding of the spiritual value of virtue and of the virtue of charity. But nonetheless, they were expressing it. And that charity came through them from the divine, because each one of those parents, each one of those grandparents, each one of those people who helped to bring us to where we are today are divine beings. Whether they ever had that idea or not, we are all divine beings at our core. And we've all come here to do a work. And when I look back now, after being a parent myself, I have a much greater appreciation for the charity that my parents expressed throughout my childhood to get me off and running in this life. We might also have other people in our lives while we were growing up who were very charitable to us, generous with their time, generous with their information and their knowledge, and just generous of spirit in general. And generosity is charity in action as well. May have been a teacher or another relative or a neighbor, someone who took interest in us and helped give us a little push, a little nudge, and showed interest and helped us grow. And this type of charity cannot really be undervalued, because it is God expressing the mother-father, masculine, feminine energies through the children of this earth to each other. And that seems to be what the experiment of this whole life is giving spirit, our mother, our father, the divine feminine, the divine masculine aspects of God, giving them a way to express themselves through us. We find it through parenting, and we find it through friendship. We find it through a significant other. And this is This is God in action. Each act of charity that is done, whether consciously or unconsciously, brings us closer and closer. And all those who have enacted those beautiful, charitable, and generous acts, it brings everyone closer and closer to Spirit and to helping the evolution on the planet evolve towards what Yogananda talked about as true charity, where everyone wakes up and really has something to offer. It's really like anything else. Charity is an everyday thing that is taking place constantly. But it is also cosmic at the same time because of this flow of energy that's happening that brings that charity forth. And if we think about our lives and the lives of everyone on the planet, everything, every day, is everyday and cosmic at the same time. We would not be here having these conscious experiences without that beautiful relationship that we have with our divine creator, mother and father. Charity is also the virtue that we associate with the birth sign of Aquarius, and that just happens to be the sign that we're in right now, the astrological sign. And Aquarius is depicted by a person carrying a large jug of water that they are spilling out. And I believe the deeper meaning of this is that these are the waters of truth and the waters of healing for the world. And our founder of Sunburst, Norman Paulson, he was an Aquarian. And I can say that the example that he set for dedicating his life towards the mission of sharing the truth that he had received from Spirit through his deep, deep meditations and his own studies was a real clear and pure representation of that energy of Aquarius, of sharing the living waters of truth with anyone who is interested. There was never a time that I would go to Norm and ask him a question and he would not take the time to answer it as fully as possible. And there were times when he would give me instruction when I wasn't asking for it, because that was just the way that he was. It wasn't like he was telling me what to do. He was just giving me the opportunity to benefit from this connection that he had to the divine. And it was just such a beautiful act of charity, always, year in and year out. And Sunburst is a reflection of that charity. That's why we're sitting here today, because Norm made that happen. I wanted to read, speaking of Norm, I just wanted to read a prayer that he wrote down about charity. O divine giver of life, may I become a true recipient of your cosmic healing forces, and then may I join you in helping others wherever I can. May I always remain true and transfixed upon your light and presence within me. You are the essence of my being, my own pure self within. I acknowledge that I must receive you before I can truly give. Take me within and embrace me. Yes, then will I surely be able to follow you and realize how blessed it is to give rather than to receive. I just think it's so interesting when I read Norm's prayer and I read the reading from Yogananda. And if you go back and you read almost all of the things that they have recorded, whether it was from a talk or from a writing, everything in their being was just focused on sharing the gift of God realization. That was all they wanted to do, because to them it was the most incredible, precious thing that you could ever possess. And men and women who have been touched deeply through their own soul awakening, that is the only thing they're interested in. Everything else really kind of falls away by the wayside. They are just interested in giving everyone the opportunity to get their understanding, and hopefully it will spark an interest that each of us might make our search. Someday, every soul that is out in creation experiencing whatever level of consciousness they have or we have, someday every soul will return to its full realization of its complete identity. That is self-realization, to know who we are, for our soul to know who it is while it is still yet alive in these bodies. We don't have to wait for an afterlife. We can have it now. This was the message. This was the message that Yogananda talked about year in and year out. This was the message that Norm talked about. And if you read any of the teachers, men and women alike, once they've been hit by this deep, deep truth and understanding, all they want to do is share it. And that is true charity. And the last thing I'd like to say before we go into our meditation, something that Norm talked about that I've never really heard anyone else talk about it in quite the same way he did. Maybe they have, but I've just never run across it. But he talked about tithing. And you may have heard him in an excerpt from a talk, possibly here in the temple, where he talks about tithing. And he's not talking about a financial tithing that we give to support the physical work. But he's talking about tithing as the charitable act of giving our life force, our love, our attention back to Divine Spirit. And those who have had this close encounter with this consciousness, they all say the only thing that Spirit desires is for us to desire back, to desire to know where we've come from and to know our true source. And Norm had a couple of pretty simple little sayings along those lines. And I remember him saying, if you reach up to God with one hand, God will reach back with two. And that's just, I think that just is to say, Divine Spirit wants to be as reunited with us as we want to be reunited with that consciousness. And the other thing that he said along those lines is, God gives to those who are busy giving to others. Throughout our day, we can keep Divine Spirit in mind and think about all of the acts that we do, that we are offering ourselves to Divine Spirit, that we might serve that greater, higher purpose here on the planet. And this is the tithing that Norm talked about. And that when we meditate and we breathe divine consciousness up and down our spine, that we are giving and receiving, giving and receiving, giving and receiving. We are um, making that connection that we already have just that much stronger. And that gives us the ability to awaken and to have something to offer as true charity to one another and to the planet at large. Let's take the time now to sit together for a silent meditation for about 15 minutes. And as we breathe, because we're all going to be breathing, that's the one thing that we all do, we can think about with each breath that we are giving and receiving our energy from Divine Spirit. And if that feels too complicated, you can just follow your breath and notice that as you inhale, the breath is going in through the nostrils, and have a good conscious in-breath. And as we exhale, the breath is going back out through the nostrils. And believe it or not, this is a very, very healing practice which connects us internally with our soul, with Divine Spirit. It feels so peaceful in here that I'm sorry to have to talk a little bit more. But I'm going to end the service today by talking a little bit about a friend of the world and a person who has influenced me, and I know people here at Sunburst as well. And that is the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away yesterday at the age of 95. And he was a true spiritual warrior who never lifted a finger in aggression to anyone. But through non-violence and through seeking compassionate understanding with others, he dedicated his life to helping awaken the people that came within his sphere of influence. And I wanted to just share a little story that I heard from him, not directly or personally. I wish, but he told a story about when the Buddha was 80 years old and realizing that he was going to be leaving this world in the near future. And he started going around to his disciples and to the different students that he had in the area where he was living. And he started giving them short talks and giving them instruction in practices that would help them establish their own real deep connection with what they would refer to as Buddha mind, Buddha consciousness. Because he knew that he had many students who looked to him for so much guidance. But he wanted everyone to know that within us, each of us, within them, each of them, there is an island of their own identity, which is the identity of the divine spark, divine spirit, where each one has come from. And I think we can see that whatever he did certainly had a great positive influence on those around him, because then they took that teaching and expanded it globally over the centuries. And Buddhism is a little bit different flavor, a little bit different approach to what we have here at Sunburst, but we all really value the good things that Buddhism has to offer and recognize that that path, like the path of Kriya meditation, like any path that is founded by an enlightened teacher and followed by people with a sincere desire to know God, that path will lead people to their divine awakening. And so today I would just like to salute Thich Nhat Hanh for a job well done, a life completely lived in true charity, charity of generosity, charity of giving, a charity that only wanted to help others with no thought of receiving for himself.
our hands and all they did. But when I look into the power of the blazing sun, I look forward to the day when you and I are one. Sunburst, break on my soul, carry me away. Sunburst, break on my soul, lead me to that day. In the song of dancing wind, I'm moving through the trees. In the roar of passion breakers pounding on the seas. Endless universe is spinning, oh spirit divine. All the mansions of creation, all we see is thine. Sunburst, break on my soul, carry me away. Sunburst, break on my soul, lead me to that day. Sunburst, break on my soul, carry me away. Sunburst, break on my soul, lead me to that day. Long ago we rode the starships, rode them through the skies, visiting the worlds of wonder, sailed through their skies, drinking in the endless power of the blazing sun.